Hi guys, I'm Megan Brightwood and welcome to my channel, or if you are a returning viewer, then hi, nice to see you again. I'm so glad that you're back. If you haven't already, certainly make sure to hit the subscribe button and notification bell down below so that you know whenever I post a new video. I do try to stick to a Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday schedule, and mostly we talk about knitting over here. Sometimes we'll throw in a few lifestyle topics as well, but today's video is definitely heavy on the knitting. I'm actually going to be doing a how to knit video for you on one of the most viewed projects that I have on this channel, and that is a pair of simple, basic mittens, and these are made out of a Malabrigo Rios yarn in the colorway Almond Blossom. They're really pretty, light pink, very, very simple, and I'm going to go over absolutely everything so that if you are maybe an advanced beginner, they would be suitable projects. Mittens are not the most simple thing to make. There is some increasing and decreasing, a little bit of shaping here and there. But yeah, I think an advanced beginner could handle these guys. So if you are interested in how to make a pair of simple mittens here, then just keep on watching. For this project, I'm going to use a US 6 or 4mm cabled needle. And the yarn that I'm using is this one from Malabrigo. It's 100% superwash wool, and it is the Rios yarn in the colorway Almond Blossom. So it's a really pretty pale pink. And I'm going to go ahead and start with a German twist cast on. So I'm going to put my ball of yarn over here. And I've talked about the German twist cast on before. It's a lot like a traditional long tail cast on, in that it has a very nice, neat edge, but it does also have a bit of stretch. So if I'm going to do anything with ribbing, I do like to use the German twist cast on just for that extra little bit of stretch. And so if you're not familiar with how to do that, basically it's very similar to the long tail in that I have my working yarn over here, the tail of my yarn in my left hand, and I'm going to take my thumb and go underneath that tail of my yarn, and rather than going in the middle like a long tail cast on, I'm going to go under both of those loops and grab that second string of yarn, wrap my working yarn around, and then bring that loop over. So it's very similar to the long tail, but just a little different in that rather than going in the middle, I'm going to grab that second yarn. So I'm going to keep doing this until I have 48 stitches on my needle. So I now have 48 stitches on my needle, and I'm going to go ahead and join my round using a magic loop. So I'm going to find the middle of those stitches. I'll have 24 in this group and 24 in this group. And I'm going to just bring that cable out so that I have both sets of stitches on my needles. And I do want to make sure that everything is nice and neat as I do this. So you can see there's a bit of a twist here. I'm going to bring these stitches down so that I have a nice little U. I don't want anything to be twisted or it's just gonna create a lot of problems. It's gonna look weird. It's just not going to work out for us. So now that I have this nice little U shape, I'm going to start working in the round. So I'm going to grab my working yarn here, and this back needle, I'm going to pull that out so that those stitches are just resting for right now. And I'm going to start working in K2, P2 ribbing. So I'm going to knit 2 stitches and purl 2 stitches. I'm going to insert my needle from front to back on that first one, bring my yarn around, pull it through, do the same thing on that next stitch. And then to switch over to purling, I'm going to bring my working yarn through the middle of my needles so that it's in the front. And I'm going to bring my needle from the back to the front this time. Wrap my working yarn around and pull it through. Do the same thing on that second stitch. And then I'm going to bring my working yarn back through my needles so that it's in the back this time, and I can do 2 more knit stitches. So front to back, pull it through, front to back, pull it through, and then I'm going to go back to purling. I'm going to bring my working yarn to the front And I'm going to continue in this manner until I reach the end of this little row here. So I'm ending on 2 purl stitches, and to continue working in the round, what I'm going to do is move my work to the other hand, to my left hand, and now I have these stitches in the back, and I'm going to put those resting stitches back on my needle. And to continue working in the round, I'm going to pull the back needle out again, and we're going to continue working in that K2 P2 ribbing. So since I ended on 2 purl stitches, I'm going to go ahead and start with 2 knit stitches, and I'm going to continue working like this until the cuff of my mitten measures about 1.5 inches from the cast on edge. So once again, I'm ending on 2 purl stitches, so I'm going to move my work to my left hand, put the resting stitches back on my needle, and pull out that back needle so that I can continue working. So here I have about 1.5 inches of K2 P2 ribbing, so it's got a nice little stretch for the cuff. And the next round I'm going to decrease 3 stitches evenly around. And to do that, I'm going to first knit 14 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. And then the next 2 stitches I'm going to knit together as if they were 1 stitch. And this is a K2 together, so I'm going to go in front to back on the next 2 stitches here, wrap my working yarn around, and drop both of those loops off the edge. So then I'm going to do that again. I'm going to knit 14 stitches. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, turn my work, and 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Knit the next 2 stitches together. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing one more time. So knit 14 stitches. Sorry, you can hear my kids in the background. And then once we've knit 14 more, we're going to knit the last 2 stitches together as if they were 1 stitch. So from here, I'm going to start working in straight stockinette stitch, and to do that, I'm going to just go ahead and knit all of the stitches. If I were working flat, I would have to do a row of purls, but since we're working in the round, I just keep knitting until this piece measures about 3.5 inches from this cast on edge. I've been working in stockinette stitch for a little while here, so my work now measures about 3.5 inches from this cast on edge. So I'm going to start working on the thumb gusset. And to do that, I first want to place a couple of markers so that I know where I'm going to be increasing for that. And if you don't have just, regular plastic stitch markers, I've used anything from rings to hair ties, pretty much anything that's going to go on the end of a needle will work just fine. So I'm going to knit the first 22 stitches here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. So I'm going to put a stitch marker right here. And if I weren't using a magic loop method, I would also put one, I'm gonna knit this next stitch, sorry. And then I would also put one right here as well, so that there's one stitch marker here, and then there would be another one right here. But since I am using a magic loop, I'm just going to use this side as my secondary marker. And then I'm going to knit to the end of this round, just like I have been all along. So let's knit back. So I've finished that round and I'm ready to start increasing for my thumb gusset. I'm going to go ahead and knit right to that first marker. And now that I'm at that marker, I'm going to just slip it right to the other needle, not doing anything else with it. And I'm going to make one increase right leaning. So in order to do that, I'm going to take the left needle and go behind this little bar here. And I'm going to pick that up. And then I'm going to kind of play around with my right hand needle so that I can get a little bit of a gap here. And I'm going to knit that stitch. So that will make a right leaning increase. And then I'm going to knit the next stitch. And then I'm going to make a left leaning increase. And in order to do that, I'm going to grab that bar again, but this time I'm going to take my left needle and go from front to back. And then I'm going to knit the back of that stitch. So I'm going to take my right hand needle and then go from front to back, right through the middle of that, wrap my yarn around and pull it through. Now, if I was using a marker on this end, I would also slip it here so that now I would have 3 stitches in between my markers. And now I'm going to go ahead and knit to the end of this round. On the next round, I'm going to just go ahead and knit all of the stitches, slipping the markers as I come to them. So there's nothing fancy about this. I'm just doing a basic knit row round. So I'm going to slip my marker and then I'm going to knit the next 3 stitches. And if I were using a second marker, I would slip that and knit to the end. The next round is going to be another round of increases. So I'm going to knit to my marker just like before. And then I'm going to slip my stitch marker and make one right leaning increase. So I'm going to go behind that bar with my left hand needle. And then I'm going to go ahead and knit that stitch through the front. And then I'm going to knit to my second marker and then make one left leaning increase. So I'm going to go from front to back on this one and then knit the back of that stitch. Then I would slip my marker again and finish out the round with knit stitches. I'm going to follow that up with a round of knit stitches, and I'm going to repeat those 2 rounds until there are 15 stitches in between my markers. So once I get to my marker here, you can see that right now I have 5 stitches between those markers, so I'm going to triple that and have 15 in between those markers, ending on a knit row round. So if you take a look here, you can see that I have 15 stitches between my markers. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to knit to my marker. And when I get to my marker, I'm going to go ahead and just take it off. I am done with it for now. And then these 15 thumb stitches I'm going to put on hold. And you could use another needle for this. You could use like a little cable for this specific purpose. I'm actually going to use just some thread or some extra yarn that I had laying around. And I'm going to put those on that thread. It can be a little bit difficult to pick these stitches up off yarn, but I've been doing this for a little while, so I kind of have the technique figured out, but totally up to you what you want to do. And then I'm going to turn my work and just keep on knitting. So this is going to kind of close up that little gap right between your fingers and your thumb. And I'm going to start working on the main portion of my hand. So if I knit to the end of this round, you can kind of see that there is a pocket for where the thumb is going to go and a little pocket for your fingers. So I'm going to just keep working on these 44 stitches in stockinette stitch until my piece measures 8.5 inches from this cast on edge. So I'm just going to knit around and around and around until it measures 8.5 inches. I've been working in stockinette for a little while now, and so my piece measures about 8.5 inches from the cast on edge. It's really starting to look like a mitten now, and all we have to do is finish up the decreases for the top of the mitten and then work on the thumb. So we're gonna go ahead and do the decreases for the top of the mitten. And if you are working on a small enough cable needle where you're not using the magic loop method, I would recommend placing a marker for the side here, and that will just kind of help keep track of everything. And so I'm going to go ahead and start with a slip slip knit. So it's an SSK. I'm going to slip the first stitch knitwise and the second, and then I'm going to knit the two of them together, and then I'm going to knit to 2 stitches before the end of my needle, or if you are working with a smaller cable needle, write 2 stitches before your marker. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then when I've reached the side here, I'm going to knit these two together in a K2 together. So I'm going to work them just as one stitch, turn my work, and repeat on the other side. So I'm going to start with that slip slip knit. Slip the first one knitwise and the second, then knit those two together, knit until 2 stitches before the beginning of my round, and then I'm going to knit those last 2 stitches together as if they were one stitch. I'm going to follow that decrease round with a straight round of knit stitches, so I'm not going to do any decreases. I'm just going to knit every single stitch from this round all the way around. And I'm going to repeat those 2 rounds until there are 24 stitches remaining. So there will be 12 stitches on each needle. So the next round is a decrease round. I'm going to slip the first 2 stitches knitwise and knit them together. Knit to 2 before my marker, knit the last 2 together. And then I'm going to repeat that on the other side. And then I'm going to follow that up with a round of straight knit stitches. And I'm going to repeat those rounds until there are 24 stitches remaining. I now have 24 remaining stitches, or 12 on each needle, so I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn, leaving a pretty long tail, and I'm going to close everything up with a Kitchener stitch. So I'm going to grab a tapestry needle here and thread that onto the tail. And then picking up my work, I want the stitches kind of lined up just like this so that I can work on both simultaneously. And to set up for the Kitchener stitch, what I'm going to do is take my needle and slip it through that first stitch on my front needle purlwise. And then I'm going to insert my needle from front to back on the back needle. So this is more of a knitwise sort of slip. Then the next 4 stitches I'm going to repeat until I reach the end. So I'm going to knit essentially that first stitch, or slip my needle through knitwise and pull that first stitch off, and then I'm going to insert it purlwise. And then I'm going to move to my back needle and insert my needle purlwise and slip that off. And then I'm going to insert my needle knitwise, so from front to back, and leave it right there. So I'm going to repeat those 4 stitches again. I'm going to go front to back knitwise and take that one off. And then I'm going to go back to front, or purlwise, and leave it there. And then I'm going to go purlwise on that back needle and take it off. And then go knitwise, or front to back, and leave it there. So like I said, I'm going to continue doing that until I've worked all of the stitches. When you have 2 stitches remaining, all I do is I'll go knitwise on that front needle and then purlwise on the back, and just slip my needle completely out. And that is pretty much it for that portion of the mitten. So let's go back and do the thumb. So the first thing that I'm going to do for the thumb is go ahead and pick up these stitches that have just kind of been hanging out here. I'm just going to use my needle to pick them up just as they are on the yarn, and I'm going to kind of split them up roughly in half. Remember, there are 15, so it's not going to be perfectly even. I just want to make sure that they are on my needle. So now that my thumb stitches are back on the needle, I'm going to go ahead and grab my ball of yarn here, and I'm going to kind of leave a little bit of a tail, but essentially I'm going to just start knitting with it. Before I work on the stitches that I had on hold though, I do want to pick up 1 stitch right between where my thumb meets the rest of my hand. So I'm going to have that tail there and just wrap around my needle and pull it through. Then I'm going to go ahead and knit these stitches on my thumb. Turn my work so that I can work the other stitches. And you could use double pointed needles as well. It's just a personal preference. I like to use just 1 cabled needle. It's easier for me to keep track of. And it's just, yeah, my own personal thing, but you can certainly do whatever works for you. And then on this side, I'm also going to pick up 1 more stitch. So let me see where a good place would be. I'm gonna grab this one, just wrap my yarn around my needle, and there we go. So now we have 17 stitches on the needles, and I'm actually gonna go ahead and go right into my mitten so that I can get the tail of this yarn out of the way. And I'm going to work in stockinette stitch until my thumb measures about 1.75 inches from where we picked those stitches up. So it's just like the rest of the mitten. I'm just going to knit all of the stitches until this little bit measures 1.75 inches. The thumb of my mitten is now about 1.75 inches from where we reattached the yarn. So we're going to decrease, weave in the ends, and then we'll be done. So to decrease for the thumb, I'm going to knit 2 together all the way around. So I'm going to knit those 2 together as if they were 1 stitch and keep going like that all the way around until the last stitch, because if you remember, we had 17 stitches, so this wouldn't go evenly if we didn't have 1 extra stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and keep knitting 2 together around. And then you'll see that we have one extra remaining stitch. So I'm going to just knit that as I normally would, and I'm going to repeat that round one more time. So I'm going to do one more round where I go ahead and knit 2 together, and I'm going to knit 2 more together, turn my work, and knit 2 together, knit 2 together, and knit the last stitch. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn. And grab my tapestry needle and slide that on. And then I'm going to kind of set things up as if I were going to knit another round, but instead of knitting, I'm going to take my tapestry needle and thread it through all of the stitches purlwise. So I'm going to start with the first needle, pull it through, and then take those off. And then I'm going to turn my work and slide those stitches down so that I can slip these on to my tapestry needle purlwise. And I'm just going to pull that nice and tight and weave in all of the ends for my completed mitten. I just went ahead and wove in my ends, so all that's left is to repeat for the other side, and you've got a pair of nice little mittens here. I am going to go ahead and block these just so that it's a nice polished look, but there you go, a nice pair of simple mittens. So there you go, that's how you make a pretty basic pair of mittens. And if you decide to do these, certainly let me know. I love to hear when you guys are doing these projects, and if you feel like it, you can certainly tag me on Instagram as well. I'll try to remember to put my Instagram account down below. I haven't been posting to it very regularly, but maybe I'll start doing that soon. But yeah, I'd love to see your projects. So yes, let me know in the comment section down below. And also, if you have any requests for projects that you would like to have on these how to knit videos, then certainly let me know that as well. As for right now, I think I'm gonna get going, but I hope you guys are having an amazing day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!